it from there.
Yeah, no, I think it's Jamar Chase. I love getting him at the 103. Let's smash this one. So all the like contingent plan we had earlier just kind of goes out the window, and we get like our ideal start. So my guest tonight is Nelson Sousa. You've heard him on First Class Fantasy with Billy Muzio and I recently. Actually, twice he came on, and now he's back in the Roto Underworld. We're splitting a team in the FFPC main event. This is going for $1 million tonight. And Nelson and I, we usually split a number of teams. We rarely split teams in the FFPC. And Nelson, is this your only main event this year?
I actually have one with David Hubbard.
Oh, awesome. So shout out David Hubbard. You can actually watch him this week. He did back-to-back nights drafting with Billy Muzio on the Dominator. They did the Terminator League, Nelson, which is kind of cool. The Terminator League is I believe it's 25 rounds, and you have to drop a guy every single week. So it's like best ball, but you have to, you remove one guy per week.
It's really unique, and there's a lot of strategy behind it. I know Dave's really good at it. I'm so busy with, my own drafts and with everything at FTN and stuff like that, that I just don't have the time to like really focus on like those like different type of formats.
Talk about what you're doing at FTN right now, for anybody who's not familiar with your work.
Right now, I mean, this is the busiest week of the season right now. So all the FTN subscribers have all their big drafts going on. So the Discord is crazy busy. Just answering questions 24/7. Guys really wanting to make sure that they're zoned in and that they don't make any mistakes. Because I had mentioned that to them. I think it was last week, and then this morning, or maybe it was yesterday. The days are like running into each other that I don't even remember. But it's crazy. But I basically told them, I said, listen, we're here to fuck shit up. We're not here to. There's no woulda, coulda, shoulda. There's no looking back and crying about your draft. Go in there. You guys know what needs to be done. We've researched, done everything. It's not the time to like when the lights come on, you freeze, right? And get like stage fright. So
and that's you see people doing that, Nelson. You see people like I think there's certain people that I see that I think are better drafters on August 1st than they are September 1st because they're not able to like filter it out and they're kind of their last minute strategy changes. And so, I completely agree with that. It's the stage fright, I think, definitely gets to people. I especially think with all the like vast amounts of information we can get these days, sometimes that can be kind of an impediment. Because I think once you have things figured out, like whenever your day that you really take in all the info, like let's call it August 1st, August 15th, the last couple of weeks are kind of noise and most of it's not helpful to us.
It's not. And because this is the busiest time of the year for fantasy football, there's so much of information, right? So you have people that it's like system overload for them. They're listening to too much information and it can confuse them. And then they get to their draft. And I mean, you have some of like the sharpest guys in the industry, right? Where they can break down information. They're on the right players. And then they go to draft and they can't really, construct a team properly. So that's the biggest thing is, when the draft comes and you're drafting for $2,000, a lot of people freeze up and they have,
and I think
like,
a lot of people also play it safe where, I don't want to be a risky drafter, Nelson, but I don't want to build teams that I finish fifth with, and sometimes I think when you get to it, you don't want to screw up, especially in some of those rounds where they can be very impactful, like the 6th round, the 7th round. I think you sometimes see people, maybe reaching for a guy they shouldn't, maybe taking a guy because of some need for structure, and passing up value. So just getting back to it, we're sitting here at the 210, and we see Nick Chubb and Garrett Wilson go off the board. We're wide open after our Jamar Chase start. The couple guys stand out. Nelson, Saquon's going to be gone. Pollard's going to be gone. Waddle,
it's amazing. Like, I'm amazed that like Saquon and Pollard are like still on the board, but I can't even make it. I can make an argument for those wide receivers. I get it, but it's really interesting, just like the flow of the draft and how like some like if you're gonna take Garrett Wilson and you're gonna take CD and AJ Brown, like that, someone's got to drop. And then if you do take Saquon and Pollard early, then two of those receivers have to drop. So I do find this year it's been really interesting, and I really like the back half of the draft.
Yeah, I love the back half of the draft. I don't mind the middle though, because I think sometimes you can see the runs. And I don't mind where we're at, because I do think that I like the beginning of the third round a lot. And I think once in a while in FFPC, when I get to like the 312, it gets a little bit sketchy, because a lot of the guys I've liked before that you could get at the 312 and the 401, start being drafted. And you see Pollard and Saquon go off the board. So right now, Nelson, in our queue, I have Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave, and Mark Andrews. Is there anyone else you want to push into consideration here?
We can take Waller in the second round.
We could take Waller in the second round.
I'm saying that kind of half joking around.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty high on Waller. But there's three wide receivers that interest me here. So like Waddle, Olave, and Ridley are the three guys that I like. And then I think we should be able to come back and possibly take Waller and kind of almost we'll see. Like we don't need to like plan ahead, but almost go kind of like a zero running back.
So
approach.
Waller's over the last 2 days, Waller's high, according to Mojo, is the 302, and his low is the 309. I feel like we should go with Waddle or Olave here, and I think Waddle, to me, a Waddle Chase start is extremely dangerous for us. We probably still get Waller at the 303. I would put it at like a 65% chance of getting Waller.
Yeah, go for it. Fire it up.
So let's take Waddle, and we have two wide receivers. I think this is a great start for us, getting Chase and Waddle. I mean, there's an outside chance you could have the wide receiver 1 and the wide receiver 2 at the end of the year if anything were to happen to Tyreek Hill. And right now in our queue, we still have Waller. We still have Ridley. I will put Hurts as a contingent play here in the third round. And we're 4 picks away, so I think we'll get one of those guys. Is there anybody else you want to put into consideration?
I've let me see here. No, I think we'll get one of those guys.
Me too. And I think it's going to be Waller. I think Waller's going to be there, but if not, I think these are both good consolation prizes. You see T. Higgins go off the board. That helps us a lot.
Yeah.
So we're
I
definitely
think Waller and Hurts are going to be there.
So it's, again, I'm doing a lot more of these mains than you are. Darren Waller's a guy we've been taking a ton. Billy and I took him in our main the other day. I still think it's the value. I still think he stands out big time, and he also allows us to not have to draft as many tight ends, because I think sometimes if you get stuck in these FFPC mains, and there you go, you get the gift. We've been seeing Waller go ahead of Hawkinson a lot in NFFC, but in FFPC you're still seeing a lot of Hawkinson ahead of Waller, which I think is incorrect at this point. So Nelson, here you're sitting here with Darren Waller, or you could take your elite quarterback in Jalen Hurts. Which way do you want to go? I'm neutral to both. I'll defer to you on this pick.
Listen, I love Hurts and Josh Allen, but I think in this format, I want to take Waller, try to create an edge there, and also quarterback seems to fall a little bit. So yeah, I don't mind some of the other guys that we could possibly get later.
Trevor Lawrence will be there probably at the 703, and a couple of those guys in the 6th round are very, very good values as well. So let's take Darren Waller, lock him in here at the 303. So if you're listening on a podcast, our start is Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, and then we get our tight end 1 in Darren Waller. So this is a really strong start. Nelson, your thoughts on this start?
I love it. I mean, I'm only doing a couple of these unless you or David talk me into, partnering up doing another one.
If we run this pure, I might have to twist your arm and get one more in. If we run
this pure. Listen, the way I look at it is I don't mind splitting, going 500K, 500K, and we split the million,
Yeah.
I'm totally fine with that. So, and, with that mentality, I want to be pretty aggressive and look at this as like, I only got a couple of shots at this to get it right. So, let's be aggressive and get, the guys that we think are, the players we like, that we have conviction on.
So I'll say, you're very well known for being a high stakes drafter and being a very successful one. But I think you'll also become very well known for your fades list. It's Billy and I are kind of doing what you've been doing for a while, where we're high stakes players, but we're content creators as well. It's always an interesting parallel, but your fades list has had a lot of really, really good hits over the years. But this year you've had a couple of these running backs that are starting to fall on that fades list for a while. Maybe talk about where you view Taylor and Breece Hall right now.
Yeah. So, obviously it's probably with, how do I put this? So I'm not going to do, victory laps. I stayed off of Twitter. I was way too freaking busy anyway to be on Twitter, but I'm not going to do it. But, the people that, are at FTN and subscribers and that, know me very well, they know that Jonathan Taylor was, on the fade list since, back in June. So obviously the news today was that he's staying on the PUP, no trade to Miami or any other team, and he's going to miss the first 4 games. So now, that pick, in the 3rd round that could have turned into gold, where if he had gotten traded, he's potentially end of the 1st round type of pick. That's my prediction, was that if he went to Miami, he would have been a 1st round pick. Obviously he ended up in the other end of the spectrum, which was, he's probably going to settle in as like a 7th round pick. I think that's like the fair price with him missing 4 games and all the nonsense that's going on with him and the Colts. So yeah, I mean, if you were following my fade list, you have 0 Jonathan Taylor, as do I, and you're feeling pretty good about it right now.
Yeah, and that one you put the alert out, Nelson, on that one. That was not just behind the paywall, because you've been dropping the green check mark on Twitter once in a while for Taylor negative news, and it's always hilarious when you do that one. You can't hold back. But there's definitely more guys on that fade list we're not going to reveal that are definitely worth you spending a little money to see. And I'll say I split teams with Nelson. Nelson is incredibly meticulous in his evaluations of players, and again, he's got the receipts to prove it. So we see Nelson. We see Josh Allen go off the board here at 310. We'll probably see Lamar Jackson go in a couple picks. Mm-hmm. Lamar's funny because he's been kind of in FFPC drafts. He's starting to go closer to Josh Allen, like the deeper we get. So right now their ADP is only a 7-player difference, but I think in this board he might be a little bit closer. So when we get the Chase and Waddle and Waller start, are you looking to take the most dangerous player with this build here? That's kind of where my head is at, regardless of position.
Yeah, I think that we have to be careful to balance it and not just go super high ceiling with no consideration of their floor, and we need steady players also. They can make sense for the team, but yes, we want to make sure that we structured the team properly and that we're considering upside for sure.
No, for sure. And you see Kittle. This is a little bit early for Kittle. He's been falling a lot in these main events. So this is definitely we've seen some 5th round Kittle recently. I think Team 12, if I had to guess, was probably worried about the tight end run and wanted to lock one in. I can't get in their thought process. And Team 11 is Curtis Patrick, and I believe he's splitting the team with Dave Cabin. So Curtis is really sharp in these drafts. I like his start for him with A.J. Brown and Garrett Wilson. He was on press coverage with me last week, so you can definitely listen to that one. And he does take Lamar Jackson. So, Nelson, I'm going to start loading the queue a little bit. Joe Mixon goes off the board. We weren't going to take him there anyway. Anybody that you want me to throw in here, let me know.
Okay. Usually, I mean, I'm looking at the draft and just trying to get a feel for what everyone is doing, but I usually don't start thinking of like my pick until it's like maybe like 3 picks to go.
Sure.
So I think, a few guys are going to get rattled off. But yeah, let's wait a little bit and just see what gets to us when we're a couple of picks away.
No, for sure. There are, I'd imagine Najee Harris is going to go before we pick. I put Deebo Samuel in our queue.
Let me ask you this. Since we were talking about Jonathan Taylor, where have you had time to process that? And with all the drafts that you got going on, have you thought about what the right price is for him, for you?
It would have to be I almost feel like if I'm drafting him, it's a running back start, and I look at him as sort of like the guy that could push me over the edge. But I don't think he's going to fall to like the 7th round. I think he's going to be there in the 6th round. And there's just so many players that I want to take in that range. It's very difficult for me to kind of pull the trigger on Taylor. And I'll say, Nelson, I bounce between FFPC and NFFC. Mm-hmm. If I played predominantly on one single site and one single contest, it would make me want more Taylor. But if I'm doing just a few entries in like, this contest, a few entries in this contest, a few entries in this, I get really scared with this. There's some nightmare scenarios with Taylor where he doesn't play for a long, long time. And FFPC, you also have a short regular season. So that matters as well. So I don't know. So we're 3 away here, Nelson.
Yeah.
I think Drake London is interesting. DeAndre Hopkins is interesting.
I think Hopkins, London, and Mike Williams are the guys that interest me here.
So Big Mike Williams opens us up to a potential Justin Herbert on the wraparound at the 503. And I think we could build some correlation with him. But I got to say, I think in terms of like pure upside for a wide receiver 3, I think Drake London is trending up for me. I really believe in his talent, and I think that he's a stud. And I think his role could be really fun. Where are you at on this pick? I'm kind of open here though, Nelson.
I'm open to it. I like all 3 guys. So if like you pounded the table for like one, a certain one, I'd be okay with it.
I think Drake London makes the most sense in terms of like maximizing upside. And I also think if we get towards the very end of the season, betting on the younger player over a couple of older guys, it's not always the best process, but I think like London could have a huge second half of the season, whereas I think Hopkins probably gives us a faster start. I'd prefer going with the upside choice in London.
Go for it.
All right, so we have Drake London. So anybody listening at home, Jamar Chase at the 103, 210, we take Jalen Waddle, Darren Waller at the 303, and then we take Drake London in the 4th round here. And now we're coming back, Nelson. I I have Herbert in the queue. I have DeAndre Hopkins. I have Mike Williams. And then are there any running backs you want to push in there?
Well,
I think Pierce is interesting and Madison are interesting because I think they're going to have the expected volume. Maybe a little early for James Cook for me, even though I like him a lot. Najee Harris is just, I don't know, 503. I feel like we're capitulating to Najee Harris. I'm not excited about him, but at the 503,
he doesn't excite me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do like Madison because I do everything we're seeing and hearing is that he's going to be a 3-down back.
I know, and they showed you today with Dwayne McBride. I mean, it's Madison, and I also like Ty Chandler at cost. I think it's crazy. I was completely negative on Madison when, the Dalvin Cook news first happened, and I didn't expect Madison to hold this value, and I'm willing to admit that I could have been wrong on this because I think the Vikings have shown that they're very, very confident in these guys. They haven't brought in anybody. And Madison's opening up the season with like a lot of volume in a very good offense.
Now, what if Hopkins is here?
Then I would prefer Hopkins. I just don't, and I don't mind pushing it at running back because I think the 6th and the 7th and 8th round will have a lot of running backs we can make up for it with.
I mean, so you're more familiar. He went anyway. All right.
Okay, so in our queue right now is Madison, Pierce, Harris, and then I don't see a wide receiver to push up here that puts us on an edge. Like, I like a couple of the wide receivers, but I don't think like Deontay Johnson's fine. Brandon Ayuk I like, but I'm fine going with a running back here if you want to go that way.
Yeah, I think we can. Let's see if we can get a gift at a quarterback coming back around, and let's go ahead and take Madison. That's the guy I believe in this year.
Let's take Madison then. That's a good pick there. So we take Alexander Madison as our first running back off the board. And Nelson, I've kind of turned the corner on this with some of these main event teams. I think a lot of people get in the idea that I don't want to handcuff, but I think sometimes when I completely punt RB2, I don't mind handcuffing because I think Ty Chandler has a clear role behind him. Now we see Dwayne McBride on the way out, and I don't have to use premium draft capital on Ty Chandler. Like if I want Ty Chandler, I'm going to be able to get him in, let's say, round 11, round 12. Where are you at on kind of your philosophy in a tournament setting like an FFPC main event or an NFFC primetime with handcuffing?
So the honest answer is that I really don't pay attention to it in a tournament or format like a main event or any of the 350s. I'm just taking high upside handcuff type running backs. Sometimes it just might be like by accident and I'll take Chandler and I have Madison on the team, but it's not done on purpose. In confined leagues, when I get into like leagues that are, a 10K buy-in and a 20K buy-in, then I definitely do focus more on that because I look at it as I'm not trying to beat 1,000 teams. I'm just trying to beat 11 other teams in the league for the prize money. So if my RB1 went down and there's a clear-cut handcuff to him, I feel like I can get by if he's gonna like miss 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, no, I guess that's kind of probably the best advice. And we did a NFFC Super right here on Press Coverage. I had Dan Williamson in, and we drafted James Conner at a very reasonable price, and I believe we handcuffed him with Keontae Ingram. So, and then I did last night, Nelson. I did with our friend Mike Sanda. Had the craziest draft. It was a 14-team, 30-round best ball. So we drafted so many players. It was unbelievable. By the end of it, I felt like I did 3 drafts. We took JaMychal Hasty in round 30. And we were excited to get Hasty because the end of the draft was so bad. It was so dried up. It was such an interesting draft. But Frank Mamola, Billy Wazowski, They were both in that one as well. We're going to draft against those guys on Friday and Saturday in New York City. But it was like Mike invites me to this a couple weeks back, and it's been like a hard league to get into. So I was like really happy to do it. But then, like you said, this week has just been crazy. It's been like constant podcasts, constant content stuff. And then I do this draft with Dan. I was like, by the end of the draft, I was just mentally done. So this 20 rounds is like 20 rounds, 12-teamer. This is like standing on my head right now. So easy.
Yeah. No, I agree. I definitely feel the grind at the end of the night when, like, for example, yesterday I had 3 drafts that I did, and then I had to do a podcast at midnight with Vlad.
Those California guys, shout out to Matty Wood and Vlad. I mean, come on, man. Nelson is an East Coast guy. These California guys are taking advantage of you with that time zone, Nelson.
Yeah. So, like, 1:30 in the morning, we're finishing up, and I'm just like, I'm dead. Like, that was it. All the drafts and then the podcast, and I was done for the day. So
you see Najee Harris goes off the board here at the 507, and I believe that I don't have the entire main event ADP, but I think that might be the main event low for Najee.
Okay.
The team 7 goes incredibly running back heavy. I think that Najee pick was one they really needed to pass on. In my opinion, with Austin Eckler, Tony Pollard, and Josh Jacobs, like for a running back start, that's very good. And then they take Amari Cooper, and then they go back to the running back well. I think if we look at the end of the draft, that team, we would have liked it a lot more if they would have just, been a little more balanced with that pick selection.
Yeah. Yep.
You see James Cook go. He's been rising. Goes at the 5'11". So 6th round, 7th round, Nelson, you're looking at like a big cluster of running backs sits there. You start seeing wide receiver values dry up. And then we also will potentially see, I think Trevor Lawrence will be sitting there the end of the 6th, possibly the beginning of the 7th. Team 2 has selected a quarterback. So if we get to, the 6-10, we can keep that in mind. We're actually in a good spot because team 4 next to us has taken a quarterback and team 2 next to us has taken a quarterback. So if we can and team 5. So if we can just get to the middle of the round and people pass up on Fields and Lawrence, then I think one of them will be there in the 7th round.
Yeah, that would be nice. It's team 7, 8, and 9. So if we can, and 6, my bad. So
and 7, 8, and 7 has to take a wide receiver. Like they have to
take a wide receiver. Team 6, that's really tough. Although he might go with the Fields, DJ Moore stack, but going 2 tight ends and then going a quarterback is tough in this format.
Big time. So team 6 goes Mark Andrews and Kyle Pitts. You're starting to see some of these bully tight end combination teams in the main event. I've seen it done a few times. It looked better when Waller was going a little bit later. I've seen some decent looking Mark Andrews, Darren Waller teams. It seems like the bully tight end teams work out well in FFPC best ball. I never see a bully tight end team when we get to the end and you're looking at like the big money winners. Shout out to Fantasy Mojo, Darren Armani. I wonder what the win rates are for that in terms of like top 10 finishes, but I bet they're pretty low. What do you think of these teams that try to go like tight end starts, or 2 tight ends in the first 3 rounds in a tight end premium format?
Well, I think that's why they're doing it. They think that they're grabbing an edge over taking a wide receiver, but we saw last year, it was basically the Kelsey show and everyone else was garbage. Really wasn't any good. And I just think that the days of like Gronk and Jimmy Graham, that was kind of like the last time I remember that you could have gotten both guys and pretty much it was like clear sailing that year. when they both had like monster seasons. That you might have another year like that, sometime, but I just think that you got to grab, one tight end and, trying to grab all these like, 2 and 3 spending premium picks on tight ends. I just don't think that's the way to go because
I'm
we've
with
seen
you.
it.
And we've seen teams kind of get burned on this. I think a lot of times, I remember this was 2 years ago. There was a lot of these Darren Waller and Mark Andrews teams would start out like that. It's just difficult. So you see Dallas Goedert go off the board. Pretty good value for Goddard right there in the middle of the 6. Nelson, we're coming up around. We have Trevor Lawrence if we want to go with a quarterback. Then there is a ton of running backs kind of all bunched together in terms of their ADP. And I don't see a wide receiver that's not going to be there for us in the 7th unless you...
Where does Pickens go?
Pickens is fine here. Like, this is right in Pickens' wheelhouse. He goes 66 overall, so this is right behind it. I think if we took Pickens, I think I'll say that there's a 60% chance on Lawrence. Not everybody's as into Lawrence. So I think we could risk it and take Pickens and see if Lawrence comes back around to get that, top-notch quarterback. And then if we are sniped on Lawrence, there's going to be some more attractive running backs here. I love Pickens.
Well, here, let me ask you this. So I'm high on Pickens, but I am high on Lawrence, and I do think that he's potentially an edge at QB, and he's kind of like the last guy of the top 8, right? So if we're thinking this through, if we take Lawrence, right, there's going to be, we might miss out on Pickens, but there's going to be wide receivers and running backs that fit our team that we'll be happy with. So I'm almost thinking, why take the chance on team 1 sniping us on Lawrence? You know what I'm saying?
I'm open to either. I'm open to either. I think it's fine. I like the idea of getting an elite quarterback and one with high upside in Lawrence. And if we do miss on Pickens,
do this. Take Pickens, because what I'm thinking is we can push QB back if team 1 takes Lawrence.
Okay, so let's take Pickens, and then we'll auto pick Lawrence if he's at the 703, but we're going to risk it. So we took George Pickens here, and Nelson, we got to dodge 4 bullets. And we'll see. Well, we have to dodge 2 bullets because team 2 is not going to take Lawrence because they have Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. And I have an idea for our 7th round pick. And I'll run it by you in just let a couple of picks go by, and then
sure,
I'm going to run this by you, see what you think.
You don't want to get too excited in case that player's selected.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about players like too far, even though like they're not listening to us. I don't want to talk about players too far in advance because then you get all excited about the thought and then he gets selected anyway.
Yeah. No, I hear you. So we dodged a bullet.
Let's see what's team 1 going to do. He's got the same build as us. Same exact build. Took Hawkinson. We took Waller. 2 wide receivers. He's got a running back. Then he takes Big Mike.
I feel like with the TJ Hawkinson, Justin Jefferson, he wants to take Kirk Cousins in some regard. He might be an Anthony Richardson, Kirk Cousins double tap team. So I think he's going to pass up because he's already got that stack set up. We will see, though. Okay, we dodge 1. He takes David Montgomery. All right, this is the suspense. This is where we win the Academy Award, Nelson. We got to wait for team one here to not take Trevor Lawrence. He's thinking about it. I think he's going to go with a wide receiver based on his balanced team so far.
I think he's going to take McLaurin or he's going to take Gabe Davis.
I will say, like, McLaurin here is a pretty good value for him to fall to the 701, even with the turf toe. Gosh, this team, just make up your mind, man. He's got 10 seconds, Nelson.
It's a tough turn for him.
He's taking it right down to the wire. Okay, so we dodged the bullet. He took Zay Flowers. So he really thought about that one. So is there anyone that is jumping out to you that would make you want to second guess our getting Trevor Lawrence here in the 7th? I say we just take Lawrence. We almost took him a couple picks ago. We don't have to worry about tight end. We don't have to worry about quarterback. They're done. Talk to me.
I think it's Lawrence or Jonathan Taylor. And the only reason why he comes in, listen, I'm fading him. I faded him all season, but I'm all about, game theory and leverage. And in a main event where he's been going in the 2nd and 3rd round of these drafts, you're going to have a main event where he goes in the 7th, where he's got a lot of risk and downside, right? But it's in the 7th round, so you can stomach it, and our team can withstand it.
And yeah, I'll say that. I think that, Nelson, we have a good enough team that if he's a 0 for the year, we're still going to be all right.
But it's tough because we're passing on my boy Lawrence. I'm going to let you decide on that pick, but I think it's between those two.
Well, man, Nelson, which way are you leaning? 20 seconds.
I could go either way, man. Taylor in the 7th round. I felt like that was the fair price today.
Let's take Jonathan Taylor.
Okay.
Let's take him. Done. Jonathan Taylor in the 7th round. We fell on the grenade, or we drafted a league winner. Nelson.
He trapped us, man.
They got us. They got us. We couldn't pass it up. So 703, we take Jonathan Taylor, easily his main event low. I'll say this is going to be the lowest I've seen him anywhere. This is going to be the lowest you've seen him in any NFC so far. Was there an earlier NFFC draft, Nelson, that you happen to see a board for?
Yeah, so I did one earlier today at 8:00, and I did pay attention to it. And hold on one second. And of course, I forgot.
But it was 6th round, I bet.
Late 6th round.
Yeah, I'll say this is easily the lowest I've seen him in a main event. This is the lowest I've seen him on underdog. This is the lowest you'll see him anywhere.
No,
so
middle of the 7th.
Middle of the 7th. Okay, so we have a Taylor here. Again, I think we can make up for it at quarterback. And Trevor Lawrence has, for people that are listening in that play NFFC, FFPC is a 4-point passing touchdown format. So he goes a little bit lower than NFFC. So we passed on it. You see Terry McLaurin here go off the board at the 705 and Jonathan Taylor at the 703. So our team right now is Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Darren Waller, Drake London, Alexander Madison, George Pickens, and then we took Jonathan Taylor. What a wild time to get Jonathan Taylor in the 7th round, Nelson.
Yeah, so I don't know if I'm going to regret that because, like I said, Lawrence is definitely my guy this year, and we passed on him. And it was at a pretty good price. But I feel like we're good enough that we can figure this out. And if I don't know if the marriage can be repaired between Taylor and the Colts, but what if during the season they do work out a trade, and let's say it's like week 3, right before, or like week 4, right? Right before Taylor is can be activated off the pup, and they do make a trade with a team,
Yeah,
and
I
now
mean,
you,
there's all sorts of outcomes here. There also could be Taylor just plays less games, but when he's on the field, he gives you 17 points per game because he's that good a player. So I don't know. It's hard to take a near zero. I think sixth round Taylor I couldn't stomach, but when you get to this seventh, like quarterback, I think we can make up for it. Whereas George Pickens versus Taylor, I would have taken Pickens.
and and the other thing too that like I was thinking of is like, all right, I like Lawrence, but I've been drafting him over at the NFFC, where it's 6 points a touchdown, and over here it's 4 points a touchdown for a quarterback. Yeah. So I feel like, okay, this is probably the format. If I'm going to push QB back, this is it. But it needed to be for the right player. I don't know if Taylor's the right player, but it's definitely one of those, risky, picks that could like totally work out, or it could just, he could be a zero all year long. But like I said, I think we're good enough that we can figure that out if he is.
Yeah, and running back 2 is the spot that I'm like always kind of least concerned about, because we do hit the waiver wire a lot, and I think we'll draft well in these next few rounds. So he's a luxury pick for us. I think that if we didn't like our start as much as we do, that would have been one where we try to have to make up for it in the 7th round with instant production. But kind of the way the board fell, I think when we start out the season with the 4 wide receivers we have and Darren Waller, and then Alexander Madison in our RB1 spot, I like the way that team looks a lot. So we did it, guys. We took Jonathan Taylor. That's the highlight of the show right there. That's the clip. If you're watching the show and you're producing it, then that's the clip, is the Jonathan Taylor drama. You see
that's the clip. That's the part where I'm tired and it's probably just time to go to bed.
There you go, Nelson. But we got a lot of draft left, man. I feel like you're a little bit of apprehension that you didn't take Trevor Lawrence, but we're gonna keep this thing going. We're gonna find some quarterback value. I'm curious what your thoughts are on Anthony Richardson now, because I've seen some all over the place takes. My initial reaction is Anthony Richardson is going to rush for so many yards, no matter how bad this offense is. A lot of times, the rushing yards are going to come when they're down big, and there's just opportunities to have non-designed rushes. And then you also factor in that there's going to be a lot of designed rushes for him. And then if they do get into the red zone, the week 1 competition for goal line runs is Deion Jackson and Evan Hull. So to me, the offense is going to be less efficient, but the opportunities for Richardson kind of outweigh that. Where are you at on Richardson?
I'm still low on him. Like I don't want to go. Someone always in every one of my drafts is always higher on him than I am.
Billy's not high on him either. We've had the same conversation. What are some of the things that concern you? Is it the quality of the offense? Is it experience?
Just the simple fact that at Florida he was inaccurate and couldn't complete a pass if like his life depended on it. And what's going to change in the NFL? That's the thing that I get hung up on, is like I watched him at Florida and like he struggled, with his accuracy. So it's like now you're dealing with like tighter coverage, tighter windows, and I don't know what's going to change. Like guys can definitely get better, and he's a super freak. And I've said this already about him. He's either Jamarcus Russell or he's Cam Newton. He's like not in between. He's going to be one or the other. So
yeah,
I put it this way, like I would be interested in Richardson as like my number 2, but I'm not drafting him as like my QB1, the guy that I'm going into the season with starting. And I get it that like you can draft Richardson with his upside and always take like a safer option, later in the draft, but I don't know. I'm struggling with that one, because like even if like he's really productive, rushing and everything. I'm struggling to see like how much upside. Are we talking like Justin Fields last year? Is that like what we're thinking?
I think that I mean, I think if 1,200 yards might not be in the realm of possibilities, but I think he's going to get 900 plus, which is still really good. But for him to have this sort of break fantasy type season, if he's not going to pass for a lot of yards, he is going to have to go, in that north of 1,000 Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields kind of level, because he's not going to have the touchdown passes in that offense. Nelson, we're a couple picks away here.
Yeah. Let me ask you this.
Good.
Because getting familiar with the format, where does Tua and Daniel Jones go? Because those would be the two quarterbacks that we could stack with the guys that we have.
Later. Like Daniel Jones, Billy, like I think Daniel Jones, if we want to lock it in 10th round, we don't need to use a 9th round pick on him. Tua is a little bit earlier. Tua goes 116 overall. So that's still in like the 9th, 10th round. So here, this is a running back cleanup round. This is a couple of wide receivers. Like Cortland Sutton is interesting in this round now with his. Then you also have the
Sutton and Pacheco. No, not Pacheco.
Pacheco went.
It would be Brian Robinson.
Yep.
He gives us like that floor guy to begin the year to replace Taylor, and then Sutton sticks out to me.
So I think Brian Robinson will be there in the 9th round if I had to bet on it, because you have JSN still on the board. Not everybody loves Brian Robinson. I think he's fine here. I think Cortland Sutton gives us another really high upside guy for this build.
Mm-hmm.
He feels a little more dangerous, but if you want to go with the structural play, we can do that.
I like Sutton.
Okay, so let's take Sutton.
Well,
if he's there.
We'll see if TB4 is going to cooperate.
He takes Brandon Cooks. So we are going to take Cortland Sutton. And then our next pick will be Brian Robinson. And let's put in a couple of contingent plays here, Nelson. Where are you at on Jalen Warren?
Charbonnet,
absolutely.
And P. Ryan.
Those are all good with me. And if we didn't have the strength at wide receiver, I would suggest a couple other wide receivers, but we're really loaded. We need to start looking at running back to balance this team out a little bit. And then tight end 2-wise, like Njoku, Billy and I got in the 10th round the other day, and that kind of appealed to me. I think that we need to go with the running back here. We've got to 4 picks ahead of us, and we have 4 running backs in the queue. So I think we're all right. We'll see that.
Yeah. I think we'll get one of those. We'll get one of those running backs coming back, and that's the insurance to be able to get out of the gates and have a playable RB2.
What is your thoughts on attacking the Indianapolis backfield later on in the draft? Are you taking shots on some of these guys? I'll say I like Evan Hull as a talent. I had him in a bunch of dynasty teams. Deion Jackson, obviously, he had a running back 1 overall week last year, and another week where he was usable. Call it like running back 25. He's a kind of guy that catches some passes, and I'm not sure if Anthony Richardson checking down to the running back is going to be a big thing. If somebody's looking to chase, Indianapolis running back points, which way do you recommend going?
I mean, Hull to me, is the most talented guy there that I'm interested in. But they could turn that easily into a committee. So it's not like I'm advocating for Hull and like he's a no-brainer and he's going to be the guy. I'm just saying that, like, to me, he's the most talented, and they could go out and sign a free agent, possibly like a Kareem Hunt or something like that. So we never know, but like these guys go so cheap in the draft Which, I mean, now with the Taylor news, who knows? They'll probably move up a couple of rounds, but Hull would be the guy for me.
Yeah, I think that's the way to do it. It's kind of a dangerous game putting too much into that backfield. And then you also have Zach Moss for when he comes back from injury. They might just go super boring with him. So we lose Brian Robinson, which is unfortunate, Nelson, but we have 2 running backs in our queue with Charbonnet and P. Ryan. I think Charbonnet is the biggest upside pick here. It's a better offense for me than Denver, and I think P. Ryan's a nice player, but I think like if Javonte Williams went down and also Ken Walker went down, I think Charbonnet would be the higher scorer.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Charbonnet's got the higher upside.
Now, if we did not make that selection of Alexander Mattison, and let's say we were chasing our running back points for like an RB1 in like a sicko build, Brian Robinson or Zach Charbonnet or Samaje Perine, would you go with Samaje Perine if you needed like points week 1 as like your RB1 in like a true zero build? I know that's dangerous game, Nelson, but is it structural that Charbonnet over Perine, or is it Charbonnet over Perine pretty much every draft?
No, I'm okay with Perine, and I definitely think that he's going to be used. That Javonte Williams, despite him playing in the preseason, I do think that he's going to be slow to come out of the gates. So Perine's going to be used. But I do know that Charbonnet is going to be involved in that offense. It's not going to be just the Ken Walker show. So he might surprise us a little bit with how much he plays. So I probably just go Charbonnet every time.
Yeah, I'm a Charbonnet every time guy too. I have in our queue for coming back in the 10th round, Tua and Daniel Jones. We can keep an eye on it though, Nelson, because if they're both still on the board and your comfort level is pretty even with the two of them, team 1 is the only one that needs a quarterback. Team 2 we don't have to worry about. So, and also team 4 and team 5 have quarterbacks. So this could be a weird draft. We've seen like Billy and I have a Darren Waller, Daniel Jones team, and I think we did get Daniel Jones in the 11th there. If we want to lock it down, we can do it in the 10th round. So we'll just kind of keep an eye on the players in our queue when we get to that level. You see Tank Bigsby go off the board here. 9th round, you start seeing a running back cleanup.
And now in this format, I've paid attention to drafts, that David's done and everything, and that you have done. So I've watched some of your guys' streams and stuff. With QB, I do notice like guys like Daniel Jones will go like in the 13th round, right?
Sometimes. It's weird. It's like, so in this draft, we haven't seen Deshaun Watson go off the board. And Deshaun Watson is kind of like the cue for like these other guys. Mm-hmm. So like Deshaun Watson usually goes off the board goes around pick 100. So this is going to get slightly unusual when we get down to this range. But again, everybody's taking a quarterback. So no one's going to take Deshaun Watson as the QB2. Team 7 and Team 6 might consider him. We might get to a situation where we just punt quarterback to round 12, Nelson, because again, it's just kind of the way the board is lying. But if Watson goes, I'm trying to think when Watson's going to go, because I don't know what Team 7's going to do.
Team 7 has Cooper and Njoku.
Yeah. So they've got to probably go with Watson there, you would think.
He took Njoku as a second playable tight end behind Goddard, with the thought that look at the teams behind him, they all have quarterback. He should be able to get Watson to come back to him. So I'm gonna venture to guess. I don't know who Team 7 is, but they'll be well played if that's what he ends up doing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And he has made up a little bit getting Pittman there in the 8th round for that build definitely helps them a little bit. Just going through this draft, Curtis Patrick's team is A.J. Brown, Garrett Wilson, Travis Etienne, Lamar Jackson, James Cook, Jahan Dotson, Evan Ingram, and he gets DeAndre Swift. There's a couple of decent builds here, but I think I really like ours. I love the Chase Waller start. I think it's super dangerous.
Yeah,
and we see the draft kind of go ahead, Nelson.
No, I was going to say this has actually been a tough draft room. I'm not familiar with the names over here in this draft room, but I'll tell you what they've pretty much drafted pretty solid.
I feel like when you get to this time of year, you kind of never know. There's so many teams in these FFPC main events. Like once in a while, you see a team that might not know what they're doing, but there's so much good information out there with like Fantasy Mojo for the ADP, and then certain sites like Player Profiler and FTN. You see some drafters who might have only one main event, but they are able to put it together. And you also sometimes see drafters who maybe draft 5 or 6, and you never really like their builds. So you never know in these streets. And then the live drafts are wild because next weekend we're going to be in New York City, and those are all really, really hard tables. You don't have an easy draft. Not one single one all weekend will be easy. But then when you get out to Vegas, once in a while, live drafts in Vegas can kind of go off the rails. People have a really good time in Vegas in general. Sometimes people draft right after the Thursday opener and don't necessarily know how to value guys, and they push guys up too much. And then sometimes you get people that maybe haven't drafted as much all summer, but they want to do a draft in Vegas. Like it's like their get out of town weekend and go have a good time. So I think these next 6 or 7 days online are always really challenging. And then the live drafts in New York City are going to be like going to the dentist, man, like pulling your teeth out.
It is going to be tough, but you know what's interesting about drafting in New York City? It's such a grind and a tough draft, but because it's filled with guys that have such strong opinions that guys get pushed up in those kind of drafts, and sometimes the draft just falls nice for you, and you just kind of like lay back and just kind of take go with the flow. So that's also possible.
Sometimes in those live drafts, you'll see guys fall like to even lower levels than you do online. Like I just remember there's certain drafts where you will see like a guy and the whole table doesn't want him, and then they feel like they're falling on a grenade, and it's kind of like playing online poker versus live poker. There's like the whole factor of, do I really want to fall on this grenade? If Billy Wazowski and Nelson Sousa and Chris Vaccaro all passed on this guy, should I really be diving on him because I'm getting him 6-7 spots better than ADP? So I think a little bit of that goes through the equation as well, Nelson, because I think a lot of these guys, like I remember last year, was Kittle kept falling when we were in New York. Najee Harris kept falling in New York. And, for the most part, people were kind of wise for that because both guys had really slow starts. But then Kittle, obviously, at the end, if you were alive with the Kittle team, you had some good weeks. So you never know. You never know with these things. Are you doing the auction this year?
I am. Yeah, that's a grind. That's Friday morning, and it's a loaded league, but like super fun. Like it sharpens your skills.
100%. That's probably the best auction draft on the East Coast. Out in Vegas, they have a couple of high stakes auctions, but that particular auction is absolutely loaded. Chris Ebel will be in that one. Billy will be Wazowski, Chris Vaccaro. I think Frank Momola does that one. There's a bunch of guys. Glenn Lowy will be in that one. I mean, that's just beyond loaded. Nelson, we have in our queue right now, Samaje Perine would be an auto pick at the 10-10. And we see that quarterback was passed up on again. So,
well, let's see what Team 7 does. I think he's going to take Watson.
He should. We'll see, though. He's also looking at the board and realizing that he only has to dodge a couple of bullets, too. He takes Watson. So Team 7, you read that correctly. Team 7 ends up getting a Deshaun Watson, David Njoku, and Amari Cooper stack. We see A.J. Dillon go off the board. So right now, Nelson, Tua, if we want him, we could take him with one of these picks. Sometimes you see Anthony Richardson going before Danny Dimes, and sometimes you see Dak going before Danny Dimes. So Danny Dimes has the lowest. He's the fourth highest quarterback in terms of this ADP.
Well, there goes P. Ryan. So I actually think that we can leave running back alone. There's no one that like sticks out to me. The guys that stick out to me now is taking Tua and not worrying it and not taking the chance that Team 1 takes him. And Rashad Bateman. I don't think he's been taken.
No, Bateman is still available. I like it. I think we can take Tua. I'd like a Tua share, and I like a Tua Waddle stack a lot. So let's take Tua. Let's do it.
Okay.
All right, so we lock in our quarterback 1. We take Tua Tagovailoa in the 10th round here, giving us a Jalen Waddle, Tua Tagovailoa correlation. We're not going to risk it with Team 1 still needing a quarterback. And now I don't have two Daniel Jones, Darren Waller teams. But that other team I have Saquon with Waller and Jones with Billy Muzio. Okay. We recorded that on First Class Fantasy. So this is good. I like having a Tua team.
Yeah, nice. I think coming back, Bateman and Laporta are the two guys that stick out to me.
Those are exactly who I had in the queue. We see Bateman go off the board. Laporta stands out big time. We also have the free look, Nelson. So if Laporta has a big game, we can use him on Thursday. And if he doesn't, it's no risk to us. So I always love getting a couple of these Thursday players. So I had the same two guys in the queue. So that's good thinking. We lose one of them. So I'm going to put in a couple contingent guys. Running back wise, is there any running backs you see? I think Roschon Johnson's interesting. Kendre Miller's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then Elijah Mitchell, I think, is interesting. Tight end wise, after Laporta, I'm not sure. I don't think it's as needed to grab tight end 2 with some of those other guys. I think there's Laporta definitely stands out.
Yeah. Let's see here. I don't see a wide receiver we need to have. We have 5 now. Sutton's our number 5, so we've got, I think, a solid option there. I think if Laporta goes, I think it's a running back, and I like Roschon Johnson. I like Kendre Miller. So
yeah, I have those guys in the queue. I have Roschon. I have Kendre in the queue. And again, the only other wide receiver, I like Nico Collins, but again, with this build, I don't think we need him. So I think it's Laporta or running back.
Yep. If we end up with Laporta, I am going to say that we probably have to rattle off some green stickers here for the next couple of rounds.
Yeah, and I think that becomes – I think Ty Chandler becomes one I'd really like to get because, again, we would have the Minnesota backfield locked up if we end up with Laporta here. I think it becomes a little more important. If we end up with Roschon or Kendre here, then I feel a little less – okay, and we get sniped on that one, Nelson. That was a tough snipe. So now we also have to keep in mind that we're going to have to make up for it at tight end 2. But I still think we go with one of those 2 rookie running backs here. I'm open to both. I've been taking Kendre Miller a little more. So in terms of exposure, I'd want Roschon. But if you have the conviction for Kendre, I will say the one positive with Kendre with this build is that week 1, if Kendre's usage is really good, we might get 2 weeks starting out of him. Whereas Roschon, I'm not sure how the split's going to go. I think Roschon has more of a path for the entire season. But Kendre, I think, definitely gives us a faster start if we want to get points out of these two guys. So I'll defer to you. We have 15 seconds. Which one?
I'm fine with either one, to be honest with you.
So let's take Roschon Johnson.
Okay.
Okay, so we take Roschon Johnson. We went right down to the wire. I do like both of those guys in the 11th and 12th round. I think they're both good values. It was unfortunate missing out on Laporta. We were one pick away from that. Again, Laporta is a luxury pick, but tight end 2 is important in this format. We don't want to get stuck with only one tight end we're comfortable with. There's a few other tight ends that are going to be coming up around, so we need to make up for it at tight end 2. We need to make up for it at running back. Wide receiver, I think we're kind of done. I like taking a couple of these later rookies and taking one of them.
In this format, I'm okay. Because in this format, you're always going to find playable wide receivers on the waiver wire. So I'm okay just taking 6 and taking one more later in the draft and just be done with it. And then, we'll back up Waller, and I'll tell you what, I'm not really really concerned because obviously I'm pretty high on Waller. I've been taking him in a lot of drafts. So my game plan moving forward is on all my Waller teams, I'm drafting with the last pick. I'm drafting Daniel Bellinger.
Yeah, I think that's a good strategy. You saw that last year with the Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely teams, and I think it's somewhat similar. I think Bellinger is good. Bellinger, has had a really, really good preseason, and they like him. So I'm fine with that. I don't mind that at all.
Okay.
But I do love Laporta. That one stinks to lose out on. I got to say that's the most tilting snipe in this entire draft for me, because
Yep.
I've liked getting him a lot. I have teams where he's my tight end 1 in FFPC, and then I'll balance him out with a veteran, couple of boring tight ends that maybe have floors in case he doesn't come out as fast as I think. But I think Laporta could be I think he's going to be a top 15 tight end, which is not a huge ask. But then all you got to do is have a couple of extra touchdowns or spike weeks, and all of a sudden you're tight end 8.
Yeah. Yep. I've been getting him quite a bit also in drafts. So it's a bummer, but it's not like we try to get cute with him and he was going to be our tight end 1 and we got sniped. We have Waller, so it's it was kind of a luxury pick as a number 2 tight end, and it would have been at a decent price to pay for him.
I'm somewhat intrigued by Jawan Johnson lately. I think there's a lot of positive buzz on him. I think they like him and they're going to use him. He definitely looked good in the preseason. And then I like Luke Musgrave later on as another potential high upside guy that's going to be on the field a lot in these FFPC streets. I think he's the kind of guy that could, end up being a steal. So there will be tight end options for us in the 12th. Kenray Miller still on the board. I put Ty Chandler in the queue. I put both Miami running backs in the queue. I put Tyler Algier in the queue. So we can keep kind of making up for it.
Don't forget Evan Hull.
Got to put Evan Hull in there. Where did Evan Hull go in your draft?
I took him in the 13th, 14th round.
Okay. So we're right in the wheelhouse at 12-10. Yeah. And then we would have the Evan Hull, Jonathan Taylor combination, which is nice.
I mean, I've been taking Hull quite a bit. I think I'm at 50% Hull for my teams. So I don't know. I decided not to wait and see where he was going to go. I just decided to set the ADP, and I think that's the price I'm willing to pay for him and just speculate. Again, 13th, 14th round pick, so many of these picks don't end up working out that when you look back, you ended up dropping them after a couple of weeks. it's not going to devastate your team. So I'm willing to, just keep taking the guy and see if Indy wants to go with, him and Deion Jackson to start the year. Who knows if like Zach Moss will be ready from his like broken hand. But when Moss comes back, they could form a committee. They could sign Kareem Hunt. Like many of those factors could happen. But again, I'm looking at it as like to just avoid it and say, well, it's probably going to be a committee. I think that's like a lazy approach to go with. I think the way to do it is try to, mix in Hull, Deion Jackson, Zach Moss, and just see like, week one, how it shakes out. Maybe they don't do anything. Maybe they're content with the guys that they have on the roster.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting. I think it's also interesting, Nelson, how you talk about having like 50% exposure to a guy. I think in the back half, it doesn't matter. Like if you have conviction in round 12, 13, 14, 15, the hit rates are already not great there. Mm-hmm. If you want 50, 60%, go for it. If you said that I have 50% on a 7th rounder or 6th rounder, I'd say we got to pump the brakes a little bit. But when you get to the back half of the draft, go for it.
No, I agree.
Do you track your first, second, third? Do you track all your ownership percentages in general?
I do. Yeah.
You don't have to say you're your highest rostered guy, but of the first 5 rounds, 6 rounds, what would be a percentage where you'd be comfortable having exposure to a guy? 25?
So I want to. I would say that like 33%.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with. I think if you start getting higher than that, you could be right on the guy and he could be having an awesome year. You can't factor in injury. So the guy gets injured and now you've got, an early round pick that you've got 40, 50% of, that's devastating to a big portfolio. So 33 is my comfort level. When I start,
I think that's it's an aggressive number. I think some other players who continually track their percentage might say that's high, but I think you are a guy that if you have conviction and you see a guy as a fantastic value, you're willing to put a third of the chips in. So I think that's impressive.
Yeah. I would probably say like, which would be kind of surprising, I think, to people, but like Amon-Ra St. Brown is my highest owned, player as far as like the early rounds, and he's a first round pick. So
yeah,
it's actually hard to accomplish that if you think about it.
No, absolutely. The thing about him is when you're playing NFFC, there's so many spots you can consider some of these guys where, like Amon-Ra, I've taken in a ton of these FFPCs, but I've never had to take him higher than, I think we pushed him up to the 108 in one of these drafts. That's my high exposure for him in an FFPC. But most of the time I was able to get him like 11, 12. There's been drafts earlier where you were able to get him at like the 201, 202. So it's wild times, man. Amon-Ra St. Brown to the moon. It's kind of like Pollard. You used to be able to get Pollard later. The market's kind of corrected itself, and rightly so. So, Nelson, we're coming up here in the 12th round. I have in our queue, Kendre Miller still there. Very tempting. Evan Hull, both Miami running backs, Tyler Algier, Ty Chandler. And then I think Jake Ferguson stands out a little bit as a tight end. I prefer him to Dulcich, and this is right about the area. If we wanted to get a Jake Ferguson, this would be right about it. He goes off the board as tight end 21, and he goes off the board at 149 overall. So I say we go running back.
I think it's running back, to be honest.
Okay, so I'm fine with that. And then Jake Ferguson goes, so it doesn't matter. So let's game theory this. My favorite guys here are, I actually think all 6 are viable picks here, Nelson. Kendre Miller, though, we almost took last time. I think from a pure talent perspective, I think it's Kendre Miller, but I have Ty Chandler, Raheem Mostert, Tyler Algier, Evan Hull, and then Jeff Wilson.
I would say Kendre Miller, and then Algier or like a Jeff Wilson, who
I will say Devon A-Chain, if we're looking for a second half of the year guy, we already have that. Let's take Kendre Miller and then we keep talking about it. Is Kendre your guy that you agree is the clear standout?
That's the guy here. And then
okay,
we can
so we're
talk
taking
about
Kendre. Let's take Kendre. And now, how are you ranking in terms of what you want out of Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert, Tyler Algier, Ty Chandler, and then I threw A-Chain in there. A-Chain, it's wild. He keeps surviving and dodging all these bullets, and we do have the Tua Waddle stack, so he's interesting. But I do think the more practical pick is probably one of the other guys based on Devon A-Chain opening up the season a little banged up. Where are you at? And you see Algier go.
Yeah, I think I saw something where A-Chain is back to practice.
But I don't know if I don't think he's going to, I don't know how limited he'll be, though. I love A-Chain. You don't have to twist my arm. I have tons of A-Chain. And he did dodge a Jonathan Taylor-sized bullet. So I'm fine taking him. It comes down to Hole, A-Chain, or Chandler. Certainly the talent level, A-Chain's the most talented back.
Mm-hmm.
Chandler makes sense for us structurally, as does Evan Hole, though. So we have 3 bullets in two picks ahead of us, and then these guys. And then Damian Harris is in the queue as well. I should have mentioned him.
I mean, it's probably going to be a committee with Miami. It's probably going to be a committee with the Colts. So I feel like, A-Chain or Hull are kind of in the similar situations. But I feel like Zach Moss and Deion Jackson are less than like Mostert and Jeff Wilson. So I think Hull has an easier path to possibly like being that guy there.
I'm fine with it. Again, I think this is relatively, and there it goes A-Chain. So now it comes down to Evan Hole versus Ty Chandler versus Jeff Wilson. There's a chance Ty Chandler drops to us in the 14th. I don't think so. So I'm not, and I think we take Hole. You have conviction on him. We already have exposure to the Indianapolis backfield. I would argue that we have the 2 most talented Indianapolis backs with Taylor and Hole. Like, Zach Moss is just a guy. And he's banged up. And Deion Jackson is a receiving back. So I say we take Hole.
Okay.
All right, so we take Evan Hole. We may lose Ty Chandler out of this, but it's fine. So just to recap our team right now is we started Jamar Chase. We go Jalen Waddle, Darren Waller, Drake London, Alexander Madison. Then we go George Pickens. Then in the big tilting moment of the draft, Nelson and I pass up on Trevor Lawrence to take Jonathan Taylor at the 703. We fell on the grenade for the rest of the league, but it could end up being $1 million grenade. Then we take Cortland Sutton in the 8th round. We take Zach Charbonnet in the 9th. We take Tua Tagovailoa in the 10th as our QB1. And then we have painted it green with 3 straight rookie running backs. We have 4 rookie running backs on this team, but 3 straight with Roschon Johnson, Kendre Miller, Evan Hole. I like the value on all of those. I like the value on Charbonnet. I think we've actually recovered very well at running back. We have a lot of contingent upside guys. We have a couple players who could take over backfields. Like Roschon, I like Khalil Herbert a lot, but I think Roschon is a little more well-rounded back. And I think he could be the kind of guy that gets more of a, the usage trends to his favor as the season moves along. Kendre, you have 2 28-year-olds in the same backfield as him. So, like, when Kamara comes back, Kamara's going to have a role. No doubt about that. Kamara looks good. And Jamal Williams is going to be, getting touches in the first couple weeks as well. But Kendre has the juice. He's a good player. He's very young, very explosive. And then you heard Nelson talk about the Evan Hole rationale. So I like the way the team is shaping up. This is a good-looking team in a difficult draft, and I think we've covered up at our worst position. I'm going to scroll the board down a little bit so people can see it.
I think it's funny how Theo goes, "Hey, Nelson, 7th round, you want to take your boy Lawrence?" And Nelson says, "Nah, let's take the guy that I've been fading all summer long."
Hey man, you don't hate the players, you hate the ADPs, and you were fading Taylor at his cost. There's been other seasons where you've wanted to take Taylor, and talent wise, he is what he is. And again, if you didn't like the way your team was shaped up in the first 6 rounds, I don't think you would have made that move. I think it's because you felt pretty confident. I think the Madison pick kind of allowed you to do that because Madison gave you a certain comfort level that we're going to get running back points in week 1 at least. And actually, I think we'll get running back points for as long as Madison can hold up. That's kind of my only fear with Madison is, like, we've seen him do it in 2 weeks in a row. We've never seen him do it more than 2 weeks in a row. And we've seen him have like these big effective games, but the volume was low last year. But NFL teams tell you what they think about players with their actions and their inaction. And I think Minnesota has a comfort level in Madison right now. And I think we should too. And I think Minnesota also has a comfort level in Ty Chandler based on what they've done with him, who's a very inexperienced guy. And I think he's got a clear role as well. So we're here. We're drafting Alexander Madison over Najee Harris. It's that's what we do, man. We're not looking at past seasons. We're looking at this season.
Absolutely.
You see the wide receivers start getting cleaned up in this round. You get to kind of the last few draftable wide receivers. Rondale, Zay Jones, Tyler Boyd, Jonathan Mingo. There's going to be a couple other interesting pockets of wide receivers when we get a couple rounds later. You'll see the Hyatts, the Michael Wilsons, those types go. Looking at some of these teams, again, I think our team is fine. You see Team 12 go with another tight end after the George Kittle pick, so I think they have kind of tight end fear. That's just my read on Team 12. But yeah, I like what Team 9 did with the Juwan Johnson and Luke Musgrave picks back to back. I think that's the kind of players I'd be looking at in the second half of the draft for trying to play catch up at tight end. And then obviously we like what Team 2 did, getting Sam Laporta as their tight end 2 to Kelsey. That's going to be a fun opening game for them with Kelsey and Laporta. They could get a good head start in the league if it turns out to be a tight end fest.
Yeah. I think what have you been doing late in your drafts? Have you been speculating on guys in that Thursday night game with the free look?
I've liked doing it. I've liked doing it late though. Like you can get Justin Ross. Well, he just made the roster, so he's to be interested to see where he settles in. But Justin Ross, Josh Reynolds, Marvin Jones, you can always take one of those guys in the 20th. I've liked taking the kickers from both of those teams because we get a free look. Obviously, Harrison Butker is a kind of a rosterable kicker. And yeah, I mean, I like the free look teams. We've also done Kansas City defense, knowing that we might just cut them after the game. But having the free look is fun. And I think if you play it right, that's a really, really can be an effective strategy as well. But I don't get too caught up in it. I've had, a number of running backs that, like, I've been taking a ton of Keontae Ingram. I've taken some Sean Tucker of late. Rico Dowdle, I've taken some. I've taken some Zach Moss. And then those rookie wide receivers I mentioned, like those guys I sometimes take as well. In our queue now, we have Ty Chandler, Jaden Reed. Those two guys stand out to me, Nelson. Hayden Hurst I like. I took him actually in another main event earlier today, a slow one I'm doing with Biplap Mandel. So I'm okay with Hurst as well. Looking at the board, I think if you want Hurst, that's the pick because I think Team 1 might take a tight end too, if it comes to us. But I mean, for me, I wanted Ty Chandler maybe last pick, and I think Ty Chandler here would be a really good value, and we get a handcuff to. We'd end up. It's not necessarily ideal to have 2 Colts running backs and 2 Minnesota running backs. You feel like you have to hold them. It maybe limits a little bit what you do on waivers.
Now you are on the clock.
But I do think Ty Chandler looks really good.
Yeah, no, I'm good with it.
Okay, so let's take Ty Chandler and lock it in. And then we've actually covered up very well at running back. I feel like Jaden Reed, Hayden Hurst is the pick on the wraparound here. There's so many guys at quarterback 2. We'll be able to draft a quarterback 2 a little later if we want to go in that direction. I think we have to with Tua, but I don't think we need to in the 15th round. I think 16th round quarterbacks are going to be there.
Okay.
Unless you were a Aaron Rodgers guy, Nelson, and then that's probably you want to use the 15th round on him.
I think
because he goes before Goff now.
Yeah.
And Goff went. So he's sitting there. If you want to go and have a surefire QB2, like, you know, if Tua goes down, having Rodgers could be nice. I'm comfortable with some of the Brock Purdy's and Sam Howells as a QB2. But it's your comfort level. Like, I think in terms of danger, Jaden Reed and Hayden Hurst. In terms of, like, structure, Aaron Rodgers makes a lot of sense.
I think Jaden Reed makes sense for this team. Give us number 6 wide receiver, and then we're done there.
You are up next.
So Jaden Reed goes off the board. We spoke too soon.
Yeah.
And I'll say that Hayden Hurst, though, Nelson, you get your tight end 2.
Well, you are on
so
the
it
clock.
Comes down to Aaron Rodgers versus Hayden Hurst for me.
Okay. I think they both make sense for this team.
So what's your comfort level here? Do you want to get our tight end 2 or do you want to get our QB2? I think
Hurst, I think he's going to be solid this year. So let's go that way, because I think there's a couple of other quarterbacks that I don't mind having as a number 2.
Done. And we do have a few. We have the Cortland Sutton correlation with Russell Wilson, if that was the way we wanted to go, and he was sitting there.
Or
we
Kenny
have
Pickett.
The George Pickens with Kenny Pickett too.
Yeah.
So we're good. So just to recap our team, I'm going to keep recapping our team. Probably very annoying for the people watching on the stream, but if you're in a podcast, I'm sure you appreciate it. Our team is, I'll do it positionally instead of in order of rounds. Tua Tagovailoa at quarterback. Our running back room is Alexander Madison and Jonathan Taylor, with Zach Charbonnet, Roshan Johnson, Kenray Miller, Evan Hull, Ty Chandler. Our wide receivers are Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Drake London, George Pickens, Cortland Sutton, and then our tight ends are Darren Waller and Hayden Hurst. So this team is good. This team is a nice team, and we've balanced out a number of positions now. We're almost a very safe build with, we've hedged 2 of our bets, but we do have the luxury of doing that because we're very strong at wide receiver, and we just need Darren Waller to kind of hold up. So mapping out how our draft will end here, Nelson, we have 4 picks left. We have to take a kicker. We have to take a defense.
Yep.
I'd like to take a QB2. And I think the last pick is Daniel Bellinger, despite the fact that you have Hayden Hurst. If Darren Waller were to go down, Daniel Bellinger would be a massive waiver wire. Like, I'm talking about 25% if you knew Waller was going to miss 4 weeks.
Yeah. No, I think that's the way to go, is let's get a QB2, let's get Bellinger and kicker and defense.
So let's keep an eye on this, because if we let's load our QB2s in the board. So I think that Russell Wilson, Kenny Pickett, and then the contingent guys, if we wait,
Brock
I think
Purdy.
Sam Howell and Brock Purdy are interesting. So if they're all 4 still available, then let's take a defense here. You also have Harrison Butker, which you get the free look. And then the defense-wise, you have a number of solid defenses right now available. New Orleans, they have a nice early season schedule. Baltimore, I think, is going to be a very good defense. Washington has the layup of all layups with Arizona. in week 1 with that quarterback room. Jets have a difficult schedule. They have a ton of talent. So we have a number of defense
I like
options.
the Jaguars too.
Jaguars, yeah, there you go. They have a very nice opening game against the Indianapolis Colts.
Yes.
So we'll kind of play this by ear here. I think this is going to be quarterback defense in this run.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely a couple of running backs I'd love to add to this team. It's completely unnecessary, and I think we have to stick with structure, especially with Tua. You want to have a QB2 that can get you through a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I agree. That's the thing with Lawrence. If you take Lawrence there, he affords you the luxury of you're just going to play him, so you're never going to think about starting someone else, and you're not really concerned with him. So you can go naked at quarterback, and you can use that spot for another handcuff running back that's still available. But I do agree, pushing it back and ending up with like a Tua, it's probably a good idea to, grab a second QB, but it's not. I mean, if these guys are going to leave these quarterbacks available on the waiver wire, maybe it's not necessary.
So we went naked QB with Daniel Jones. I've also done double tapping quarterback and having two of the Daniel Jones, Anthony Richardson, Geno Smith, Dak Prescott tier when the draft falls to me. So I'm okay either way. I just worry with Tua that, he's had times he's missed. He's got the concussion concerns. I don't really want to go naked QB with him. I think he's the one that you want to have a backup quarterback for. And we've already pushed it, and we waited to the 16th round here. So I think I don't really see an edge here because you already want Bellinger to be one of these two picks as our tight end 3.
Yeah.
And then we're forced into kicker and defense. So I think we take a QB here. We actually, team 2 has no QB2. So we can, if there's a defense you want to take, we can take them first.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see what defense comes back to us. But again, the Saints, Ravens, Washington, Jacksonville,
New
Buffalo.
Orleans.
Sorry, say it again.
New Orleans.
Yeah, the Saints. All those defenses. The Saints definitely have more of first few weeks of the season. You just stick them in the lineup and that's it.
Yeah, they've got a great early season schedule. So I've liked them because when you draft a lot of teams, you don't want to have to stream defenses as much as possible. So we see Isaiah Likely and Hunter Henry go off the board to Curtis Patrick. Curtis Patrick went with a wide receiver cleanup run with Nico Collins, Adam Thielen, Tyler Boyd, and MVS. I'm not sure the MVS pick was needed there. And he has Lamar Jackson. But again, I usually like the way his teams look. And ETN, Cook, Swift, with those wide receivers, it's not bad with Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
So we're just waiting around here, Nelson. It kind of stinks to know what you're going to take because it's ruling out a lot of guys I like. But we have to stick with this structure on this team. There's a couple of wide receivers I would love to consider. I kind of wish this was a 22-round draft, to be honest with you.
Yep. I mean, the other thought too, there's plenty of kickers, but over here, you actually have to select a kicker versus it being team kicker, what I'm used to. So there is something to be said about having a Daniel Carlson or someone like that that's super rock solid.
I like McPherson and I like Carlson, and I agree they stand out. I think that's a good point you made. Also, just one thing to consider, we could also take a Justin Ross in the 17th round, not take QB2, and then if he doesn't get the snaps or play, we could cut him loose after game one and pick up a quarterback. It's a little more complicated, but
now you are on the clock.
Okay.
I feel like these guys are going to leave quarterback alone, that we can probably get Howell or Purdy on waivers. So
let's right now, what's the bigger edge to you? Taking McPherson, Carlson, or taking one of these defenses?
take the defense. You like the Saints, right? The most, or
I like the Saints, and I don't think we have to worry about them to start the year.
Okay. So
we're going to take the New Orleans Saints defense. And then I think if we come back around into the 17th round and McPherson or Carlson are there, we take them.
Okay. I also like Young Hoku.
Yeah, I like him too. But with McPherson, you get that great offense. He's been reliable. Carlson is just awesome. Koo had that big-time season 2 years ago. He's still a very good kicker.
Yeah.
I think it's Young Wei. You want to call him Young Ho though? Go for it, Nelson.
I do like.
There you go. Yeah. So we see Kenny Pickett go off the board. Russell Wilson. Starting to see some of these QB2s, but we still have in our queue for people wondering why we haven't taken QB2. Howell and Purdy are still in our queue. One pick away, Nelson. If it comes down to Carlson or McPherson, I know you're a Carlson guy. Let's go with him.
Okay. Yeah, that's the guy that I like. Like, just, watching him the last couple of years, like, he's just like, he's the closest thing to Justin Tucker, where he's just automatic.
And also, we like the fact that he's playing with Jimmy Garoppolo.
Now you are on the clock.
Get a nice amount of field goal attempts.
Mm-hmm.
So we're taking Daniel Carlson. So we've completed our one-off positions. The kicker defense are done. We have New Orleans and Daniel Carlson. Team 4 next to us did the exact same thing. They went defense kicker as well. Nice to be done with that. So we have 3 picks left. Quarterback is 1, Bellinger's 1, and then a luxury pick. So
Okay.
I'm open to. I like Keontae Ingram a lot. And he just goes off the board. So you know what? We're not even going to talk about it. Why don't every time I say a guy's name, we lose him. So let's lower this down. What are you drafting tomorrow evening?
Tomorrow is got prime times.
Nice.
Prime times, and then get some rest to get up in the morning and head into the city.
That's great. Going to Chris Viccaro's, our host of Fantasy Empire, is also hosting the get together on Thursday evenings, which is always a lot of fun for NFFC drafters.
Yeah. I'll be finding myself a booth in his restaurant so that I can draft.
That's right.
Also.
Nelson will be the one. You say hi to Nelson, but he's got a computer open and he's got skin in the game, even when at a get together.
Yes,
and you'll see a lot of people there. That'll be fun.
And I'll be mocked, and that will be the joke of, like, can't even just drink put back a few beers and relax, for one night. Nope, got to be drafting.
We have a very busy weekend in right here at Player Profiler. I'm going to be drafting in the FFPC. Actually, I'm going to be doing a main event with the GOAT District, and then I'm going to be doing a draft with Billy Muzio at 10 o'clock, FFPC 350 Fantasy Pros Championship. So the GOAT District 1, we're not going to show live because it's a main event, and we don't want to get sniped. But that'll be fun. And then we have First Class Fantasy. We have Alfredo Brown and Dave Kluge this week. So we've got a lot going on. It's just loaded podcast. And tomorrow, Nando DeFino. Well, it's not tomorrow. You're going to be watching this show after. But make sure and check out the Fantasy Empire. Chris Vaccaro and Nando DeFino's podcast is over here at Player Profiler this year. It's always a good one. I've listened to it for years. I'm so thrilled they're with us. Nando's got to be out of town, so I'm filling in with Chris Vaccaro. So you can see Chris and I having similar conversations that I have with Nelson about some of these high-stakes strategies. All right, this is just a waiting game here, Nelson.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, man, these guys, for these last picks, they grind the clock.
I'm seeing that a lot lately. It's bad draft etiquette. Even Dan and I were in that ridiculously long draft. It was 30 rounds, 14 teams. So start doing the math, guys, of how many players are selected in that draft. And you get down to it, and it was people grinding the clock in like the 25th round. I'm like trying to go to bed. I think I was asleep 15 minutes after that draft ended. And I'm like, oh, good God, these guys are just torturing us. But it is what it is, man. Some people like to use the clock, and some people, have consideration. If Nelson and I know our pick, I think sometimes the alpha move in a draft, the power move, is to take your pick 5 seconds in, because it's like you know what you want, and these guys all messed up, and you left me this value. I'm just going to take it.
Yeah.
So the auction, Nelson, $2,500 auction, and it's 11 managers with you that are all really, really good. That's tilting. That's a tilting thing. That tires you out a little bit, doesn't it?
The auctions themselves are tough, and they're long, and there's no breaks. Like, it's not like for us, we're in the 3-hole, and we can make our picks in the turn and say, I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'm going to go to the fridge and grab a drink. There is no breaks in auctions. Like, you have to be paying attention the whole time. It's grinding, and then it's just super competitive. So like, these guys are so good at it that even if they're not interested in a player, if they feel like the player is too cheap, they'll still bid you up on that player.
You get price checked a lot. A lot of the times these guys will just mess with you and price check you. That's a dangerous game, though, Nelson. Talk about that. Do you like to do that, where you'll try to bid somebody up on a player maybe you don't like, or do you worry that you're going to get stuck with $20 worth of somebody?
I never get involved in players I don't like, because I get scared that I'm going to get stuck with the player. But if there's a player that I'm indifferent but I don't need that player for my team, but I feel like he's going too cheap, and I'm just like, let's say like I have Jalen Hurts as my QB, and like they're bidding on Lamar Jackson, but like it's way too cheap. And I'm like, God damn it. Like, he needs to go for like, high double digits. So like, I throw a bid out there. I'm definitely going to like bid it up. But like, guys, they're smart. So they see like, wait a minute, what's he doing? He already has Hurts on his team. You know what? Suck it, and they'll just leave you hanging, and then you're stuck with, two really good quarterbacks. So you do have to be careful with that. I think the wide receiver and running backs, it's a little easier to do because they don't know whether you really want that player or not. So like, I guess quarterback was a bad analogy, but it would be more like running backs. So like, you could have a running back on your team already. Let's say, you have Saquon Barkley or whatever, or CMC, and then like bidding gets involved with like Pollard, and you could get involved if you feel like he's going too cheap or whatever. But like, I don't know, that's also a bad example, because like those popular guys, there's multiple people bidding on them. So
yeah. Do you ever worry about when you're drafting in New York, this doesn't apply to people drafting in Vegas because I feel like Vegas has more tables. But in New York, maybe you give away a little bit in your auction of the guys. I mean, people know who you're on anyway. But do you ever try to game theory that out at all? Like, I don't want to give up too much of the guys I'm really targeting, like your dollar bid guys. Maybe it makes it so people think, hey, this is the guy, or the $2 bid guys. This is the guy Nelson wants in like the 17th, 18th, or 18th round. Do you ever game plan that?
I'm in
it's a $2,500 draft, people. So it would be Nelson's leaving money on the table, because I imagine you're not leaving money on the table with that one.
No. And at the end of the day, like, I draft with these guys so much in main events and stuff like that. Everyone knows like who, each guy likes for players.
So Nelson, we're OTC here. Brock Purdy went. The quarterback 2 options are Derek Carr, Jordan Love, Matthew Stafford. I say we take Michael Wilson and see what his usage is like to start the season. I think Daniel Bellinger we could also just take him at the 1903 and make sure we get him. Which way do you want to go here? So it's these 2 guys plus a quarterback.
It's Bellinger, Wilson, and a QB. Is that what we're doing?
I think that's the max, best strategy for us. There's a couple running backs we could push into consideration. So it's quarterback Carr.
That's fine. Take Wilson.
So let's take Michael Wilson. And then let's talk about this 19th round pick. Does every single team have a QB2? Let's look at this. I think we might be there. Team 1 has 2 QBs. The only team without 2 QBs is Team 2. So we're going to have an opportunity to draft before them next go around. So we're safe letting a QB pass and just taking Bellinger, unless you think somebody just wants to jam us by taking a QB3. Which happens.
I would just take Bellinger because, I don't know. In this format, like, these guys get crazy and they'll take like 5 or 6 tight ends. So
100%.
I'd rather just
so let's lock down Bellinger. Let's lock him down.
Yeah,
let's lock him down for sure. Although this team 1 is kind of a wild card, they could potentially go Bellinger with this pick. Again, this is a bleed the clock situation here in the 19th round.
We did bleed the clock, but we're also doing a stream, so we're kind of giving our thoughts and talking about our picks.
Well, I'll say we've been very we've had very good etiquette on most picks. There's been like 1 or 2 we've gone down to the wire. So he goes with a Thursday night free look. Richie James is interesting. Let's take Daniel Bellinger here at the 1903.
Okay.
Although I do think with some of these, let's take them. Let's just lock them up. I was going to say with Knox and Otten still available, we could have pushed it, but let's not risk it. We have the structure we want. So our tight ends are Hayden Hurst and then Darren Waller with Daniel Bellinger. So we have a 3 tight end build, but a lot of safety in it because we have both New York Giants tight ends. And I think we got very good value on Hurst in the 15th round. He could end up being he's like a discount Dalton Schultz, Tyler Higbee type. I think he's going to have, predictable targets week to week, and they seem to like him. And a rookie QB, safety blanket type player for him. And they're running out of bodies in Carolina. DJ Shark is back, but a lot of those wide receivers are a little bit banged up. So they don't have a whole lot of depth there. I think Hurts is going to be, low end tight end 1, mid tight end 2.
Yep. I'm just trying to see if there's another player we can take over a QB, but
you have the right idea in our queue. It's the unattached running back hoping one signs. That's probably the play. I don't see anything else like a real like gut shot one. The only other one that I would say is if he's sitting there in the 20th round, like Cade Otton in some of these FFPC leagues that was not selected, you could just see him being on the field a ton, getting targets, and being kind of a useful player in that Tampa Bay offense. It's like an ugly offense people don't want to invest in, but Otton had some moments last year. He's sitting there. That's the only one that kind of stands out to me.
Okay.
Yeah, quarterback is just banged up right now. This is an ugly turn for us. And we are getting jammed here, Nelson. You're seeing the 3 QB drafters. But all this says to me is people are going to be cutting their QB3. You're not going to be able to hold on to QB3. So we could go naked Tua here. And I feel like a lot of times if you see people having 3 quarterback builds, they don't like anything else available to them. They're just going to say, hey, I'm just going to take this player I know and this player I kind of expect. And I think once in a while, a team does try to block you.
Yeah, I mean, man, I have trouble taking 2 quarterbacks, never mind 3.
I've never taken 3 in my entire life in one of these high stakes drafts. It just, I can't do it. I don't really see the argument for it. I see the argument for, taking multiple free look guys. Like I think if you want to go into a draft and you're pot committed to having 3 dice rolls and just take 3 of those guys, I can understand that. I can even understand going Kansas City defense and Detroit defense, hoping one of them has like a pick 6 or a strip sack, and trying to get like that edge on the opening game, or maybe double tap the kickers and hope one has a 15-point game, some weird game flow. Like you can go play waivers right after game 1, but I don't understand a 3 quarterback build. I think it's weird. So anyway, the quarterbacks available to us, I mean, unless you want Matt Stafford, I say we just punt it and get one off the waiver wire when they become available.
Yeah, at this point, I don't want any of the quarterbacks. We'll play the waiver wire.
Yeah, by week 2, there'll be a number of guys on the waiver wire we can get. We'll keep an eye on it. Leonard Fournette stands out, and then if you wanted to go with a free look guy, the Detroit players are there right now, where you could take a Josh Reynolds or a Marvin Jones. And in this high scoring a game, one of those 2 might put up a number, like a random 18-point week.
It's possible. I think that's probably the number. If one of them puts up 18, I'm totally okay, like sitting Pickens and Sutton and just take it, banking the 18 points.
I mean, 15, you're probably banking. That's a philosophical argument. 15 points out of your flex, you're probably just banking that and saying, okay, I'll win my week. So I'm open to one of those guys. Who's the better dart throw now? It's probably Josh Reynolds. He's been on the field more. Or are you a Marvin Jones guy like Billy Muzio?
I like both guys, but probably Reynolds is my first choice. And it's going to be between him and Fournette.
So, I mean, Fournette, it's a. Do you want to go with the dice roll? And Nelson, you could also, if Fournette is not selected, we could add Fournette in the waiver wire run.
Yep.
So the free look's the free look. I think we go
let's
free look.
Speculate on the free look, and then Sunday morning we can, if things don't work out for Reynolds, we drop him and pick up Fournette if he's still there.
I'm gonna make the move Friday. I'm not gonna wait, because I'll say this: don't try to do anything last minute in Vegas when you do Vegas for the live drafts.
Yeah.
If anybody's going out there, don't try to set your lineups on Sunday morning because it's a time difference for all you East Coast people. And then you also have to navigate where you're going in the morning to get to watch the games. It is it's a dangerous game to try to do that. And also don't have too good a time Saturday night because you want to wake up and check the inactives and all that kind of stuff. Nelson, if you remember, this was the Trey Sermon, Elijah Mitchell 2 years ago, where some people had Trey Sermon in their starting lineup in that opening game, and he's inactive. And they wake up, they roll out of bed, and they're just jammed.
Theo, I remember when I used to go out to Vegas all the time. It would be Hubbard and I, and it would be Saturday night. The last draft of the season was the 20K Platinum. And we would literally, like, you can imagine, like, we had like 300 teams, something like that. And we would sit up all night to the point where we would just go to the sports book at like MGM. And like, that used to be one of our favorite places to watch the games. And we would just sit down and like find seats because we know like you got to get there early in the morning. Or like it just all the seats get taken up. So we would just sit there and we'd be like sitting next to each other and we're,
You are up next.
I'm drinking coffee. Dave doesn't drink coffee. So he's drinking soda, pure sugar, just to stay awake. And like we would go right through and we'd be zombies on Sunday.
That's just how it is, man. You grind all weekend and then the games, you're just getting through and you're tired, but it's a lot of fun. So we'll go Josh Reynolds here, Nelson.
Yeah, that's fine.
Let's do it. Okay, so this draft is in the books.
I really like this
walk
team.
Away.
So I was just going to recap. I really like this team. The pick is going to be between Taylor and Lawrence. That's the pick that I'm going to be hung up on whether it was the right move or the wrong move.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we took a gamble, but it was a calculated gamble. I like this team a lot. I hope we walk away Friday evening after we draft in the Super, and we like our team as much as this one because I think we really did some great things in that first 6th round. And then take the Taylor pick aside. I like our pick in the 8th round a lot with Cortland Sutton. I like our pick in the 9th round with Charbonnet. We end up getting the correlation with Tua Tagovailoa and Waddle. Waddle on a points per game basis was really good last year. And then I really like what we did in rounds 11 through 14 with Roschon Johnson, Kendre Miller, Evan Hull, and Ty Chandler. I think that was like a really good run for us and the running backs. And then I like our Hayden Hurst pick a lot. I think 15th round Hayden Hurst. Like when you start looking at some of those tight ends in like the 11th, 12th, 13th round, 14th round, I think like I would take Hurst over a handful of them. And then we get our kicker, we get our defense. We have edges at both of those positions, I think, at least for the first few weeks. And then I like what we did with Michael Wilson, our handcuffed tight end, Daniel Bellinger, and then Josh Reynolds for the free look. So this team is good. This team, if Jonathan Taylor can become Jonathan Taylor again, then this team is really, really good. We're going to have to, play the waiver wire and try to get ourselves a quarterback too. But that's the least, last time I looked, Nelson, we don't get any points for quarterback too. So we're okay for now. And that's it. So this was a lot of fun. This is your 3rd time coming on with Billy and I. This is awesome. We've gotten so much great information out of you. Let everybody know where they can find you, where they can get your work this year. And yeah, man, I hope you crush this season.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And splitting this team with you was a lot of fun. And hopefully we can draft a really good team in the New York